The fight is confirmed. Sean Strickland tweeted earlier today that he has come back from negotiations with the UFC and they're going to pay him exactly what he wants in order to take that short notice fight with Paulo Costa. And this is likely going to be on the UFC 301 if I am not mistaken. But this is very clearly a way to try and appease Sean Strickland without giving him exactly what he wants, which is another crack at the title. Because as we've discussed before on this channel, there is no way the UFC is going to let that loose cannon become champion again unless he is completely undeniable and smokes basically everybody else within the top 5 in order to get that title shot again. And although I am one of the people that thinks on paper he definitely deserves the title shot, once again, I recognize the fact that the UFC can't alienate their sponsors with Sean Strickland going off on every little thing. So, I thought that Sean Strickland was going to be in a world of trouble for denying that fight with Paulo Costa. He goes on Twitter, he basically says that he's done with the UFC, he's pissed off, he's this, he's that. He said a bunch of different things, and usually when that kind of stuff happens, Dana White does not take it very well. However, I do think that Sean Strickland is in a very interesting situation when it comes to his overall status within the UFC, because he is certainly a fan favorite, probably one of the top, at least top 5 most popular fighters in the UFC right now. And so unlike other people who have sort of defied Dana White and the will of the UFC, and they kind of go after them and try to bury them and all these different type of things, I think that they played this really well in trying to appease Sean Strickland. So what they've done is they've given him the and we don't know what that amount is, but they've given Sean Strickland what he wants in terms of the financial side of things, right? And like I said, I think they're in an interesting place with Sean Strickland because he is popular enough that if they sort of treat him improperly, incorrectly, it could blow back on them. You know, he could go over to PFL, he could go to somewhere else if they, decide to destroy him contract-wise or whatever the case may be. And he would mean huge things for another organization in terms of his popularity and that type of thing. But there's no question in my mind that they are indeed trying to keep him away from that belt. Paulo Costa looked really good against Robert Whittaker when they fought, especially in that first round. His kicks look great. He's very powerful. So there is a good chance that Paulo Costa gets the job done. And, Sean Strickland kind of goes back to being a popular fighter, but somebody that, doesn't get in a position for a title anytime soon. Now, what I think in this fight, if Paulo Costa and Sean Strickland does end up happening, I think that Sean Strickland is going to come out on top in this one. And here's why. I think that almost everybody who trains with Sean Strickland, everybody who talks about Sean Strickland says he's really difficult to deal with the first time they fight. And he's especially difficult to hit the first time they fight. And if someone who's got kicks, punches, power, accuracy, like Israel Adesanya, gets beat for 5 rounds by Sean Strickland, then in my mind, what chance does Paulo Costa have? Again, you never know, because Paulo Costa also has, aside from like that Izzy fight, thrown caution to the wind in many of his previous fights and kind of just come forward like a bull and gone for broke and a KO and whatever, right? And he might throw that caution to the wind with Sean Strickland just because of the fact that Sean Strickland doesn't really have KO power. So that could be something that happens there. But overall, the way I see this playing out, this is a way to kind of appease Sean Strickland, to pay him, but they want, what they say, like, keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. Somehow I feel like he's in between that when it comes to the UFC because he's super popular. The fans love him, but he's also a liability when it comes to the sponsors, right? So they definitely don't want him back in a position where he's champion and kind of, quote unquote, speaks for the organization, right? but they don't want him to leave either, or they want to keep him relatively happy, pay him well, keep him within the organization, because if they don't, if he goes off to PFL, Bellator, One Championship, any of these things, he's going to mean a lot of eyeballs for that organization. Now, again, these organizations also need sponsorships, money coming in, probably more so than the UFC. So they're you never know, right? But they'll probably be even more, they could be even more wary about, Sean Strickland being that loose cannon. So I just think it's super interesting the way this is all playing out, because like I've said before, and I said earlier in the video, usually when people defy Dana White in the UFC, he does what he can to, try to stick it to them and make them see things his way, right? But in this case, it doesn't appear to be so. It seems that they had a nice talk with Sean Strickland on what they want from him, etc., etc. But there was no mention in Sean's tweets or anything by the UFC that he's going to be fighting for a title anytime soon. So I just find this whole thing interesting. I find this sort of saga of Sean Strickland to be one that is very interesting, just because the guy is so unique, right? He doesn't toe the line. He doesn't really play by the rules. We've seen the guy sort of, come out emotionally, but also like beat up influencers. He does all this different stuff to try to be like the manliest man possible. He's a fighter, rides motorcycles, shoots guns, like all these different things, stands up to the woke mob, all that other kind of stuff. But at the same time, he has gone after the UFC. He has gone after, just the Navy SEALs. He has no filter, right? He says what's on his mind, but that's also gotten him into trouble with a lot of people who are usually kind of his fan base, right? So it's just interesting. I don't know what you guys think about this matchup between him and Paulo Costa. Like I said, I think that he's going to come out on top in this one, especially if it goes to a decision, but there is a very good chance that Paulo Costa steamrolls forward and gets a KO, right? It'll be a competitive fight. It'll be an interesting fight. Both of these guys are fan favorites, so I think that'll be a great addition to UFC 301, which is looking incredibly bleak right now. And something else that I think is interesting about it is that if we can get that on the card, and then if Alex Pereira can get the job quickly done at UFC 300 and take no damage, maybe they turn him around really fast and have him defend his title again on that Brazil card. That would be really interesting too. But yeah, it's it's just a unique situation. It's interesting to see how this all unfolds. And my guess is right now Sean Strickland is at least a couple fights away from getting another title shot. I know they're doing Izzy versus Dricus. I think UFC 305 or 306, something like that. And, Sean Strickland is not in the conversation at all right now. We've got Khamzat versus Robert Whittaker. Whoever wins that is supposed to fight for the title. They haven't mentioned anything about Strickland, even though it was a split decision loss, and even though he's got to win over Izzy. So if Izzy beats Dricus, maybe there's something that happens there. But like I said, the UFC is trying to put up as many barriers as possible to try to get him out of there and away from the title and away from being kind of that guy. Anyway, if you have made it this far, thank you for watching. If you wouldn't mind hitting the like and subscribe button, it helps with YouTube algorithm, helps grow the channel. And let me know what you think in the comments. How do you think this matchup goes between Sean and Paulo Costa? And do you think that the UFC is trying to keep him away from the title? I know we've talked about this before, and a lot of you agree with me, but some of you don't. So I want to know your thoughts. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.